I always believed in the power of a well-laid plan. As a mother of two with a career in project management, planning was not just a skill, it was my lifeline. But some moments in life, no matter how meticulously you plan, spiral in directions you never anticipated. The birth of my third child was one such moment. It was a balmy evening in late August when I sat down with my husband Mark to finalize the birth plan. Our living room was quiet, a rare occurrence in a house usually filled with the rambunctious laughter and chaos of our two sons, aged 4 and 6. They were at my mother's house for the night, a small but significant detail in the tapestry of our plan. "Okay, so when I go into labor, you'll drive me to the hospital, and Mom will be there with us, right?" I confirmed with Mark, who nodded, his eyes scanning the spreadsheet I had created. "And your mom will pick up my mother, the kids, and Graham from Mom's house. Everyone's on board with this?" I asked, seeking one last confirmation. "Absolutely," Mark reassured me, squeezing my hand. "Your mom in the delivery room, my mom bringing the boys, and your grandmother. Everyone knows their roles." The plan was a delicate balance, crafted over months of discussions and negotiations. For both my previous deliveries, my mother had been my rock, guiding me through the storm of childbirth with a calmness that seemed almost supernatural. Especially after my last delivery, where complications had left me fighting for my life, her presence had been my anchor. I needed her there, again, for the birth of our daughter. Our daughter. The thought brought a smile to my face, mingling with the undercurrent of anxiety that had been my constant companion throughout this pregnancy. After 2 boys, the prospect of a girl had brought a new dimension to our family dynamic, one that filled me with both excitement and a hint of nervousness. "Everything will go as planned," Mark said, his voice laced with confidence I desperately wanted to mirror. "Your mom has been through this with you twice already. She wouldn't miss it for the world." I nodded, allowing his assurance to settle my frayed nerves. The plan was solid, everyone was on board, and all we needed was for nature to take its course. But as the night grew deeper, and our house settled into a quiet that felt both comforting and eerie, I couldn't shake off a nagging sense of unease. Little did I know, that unease was a premonition of the turmoil that lay ahead. It was a crisp morning in early September, the kind that hinted at the impending shift from summer to autumn. The sky was a canvas of soft blues and grays as I awoke to a familiar pressure in my lower back, a dull, rhythmic pain that had become an old acquaintance over the past few months. But this morning it felt different, more insistent, as if nudging me towards a realization. It took me a moment, amidst the haze of sleep, to understand. The baby was coming. Mark was already up, a silhouette against the dim light of dawn, when I whispered, "It's time." The urgency of the moment swept us into a well-rehearsed routine. While I focused on my breathing, Mark called our mothers. "We're headed to the hospital. It's time," he said, his voice a blend of excitement and nervousness. To my mother-in-law, he added, "Please pick up Mom, the kids, and Graham. Remember the plan." I clutched the phone, wanting to hear my mother's voice. "I'm on my way, sweetheart," she said, her voice calm and steady, a balm to my escalating anxiety. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Mark's steady hand on mine was the only anchor I had as waves of contractions began to wash over me. Each wave was a crescendo of pain and anticipation, a reminder of the life I was about to bring into the world. We arrived at the hospital as the sun peaked above the horizon, casting a golden glow that felt like a good omen. The nurses greeted us with practiced smiles, ushering us into a delivery room that felt both alien and strangely welcoming. "Your mom will be here soon," Mark reassured me as he helped me into the hospital gown. The sterile scent of the room mingled with my growing fear. I needed my mother there, her presence a vital piece of my mental armor against the pain and fear. Minutes turned into an hour, and still there was no sign of my mother. The contractions were intensifying, a relentless tide that left me breathless and scared. Mark tried to soothe me, but his words were a distant echo against the roaring in my ears. Finally the door opened, but it wasn't my mother who walked in. It was my mother-in-law, alone, her face a mixture of excitement and something I couldn't quite place. My heart sank. "Where's Mom?" I managed to ask, my voice strained. She's not coming. I thought it would be better to let everyone rest. It's still early," she said, settling into a chair as if this were just a minor change in plans. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She had unilaterally decided to alter the plan, to deny me the one person I needed most. Panic and anger surged through me, drowning out the pain of the contractions. "Mark, I need my mom. Please call her. She needs to be here," I said, my voice barely a whisper amid the chaos of emotions. As Mark stepped out to make the call, I was left with my mother-in-law, her presence a stark reminder of the support I had been denied. In that moment, the delivery room felt more like a prison, a place where my carefully laid plans and hopes were crumbling around me. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls inching nearer with every ticking second. My mother-in-law sat there, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. The pain of each contraction was now intertwined with a piercing sense of betrayal. She had disregarded our plan, our agreement, and I felt abandoned in my most vulnerable moment. "Why didn't you bring my mom?" I asked, my voice laced with pain and anger. "She was supposed to be here. I need her." My mother-in-law looked up, her expression one of surprise, as if the weight of my words was lost on her. "I thought it would be best to let everyone sleep. It's not a big deal, honey. I'm here for you," she said, her tone attempting comfort but only fueling my frustration. "Not a big deal?" I repeated, disbelief sharpening my words. "You changed everything. I don't need you here. I need my mom." The room was spinning, a carousel of pain and anger. I clutched the bedsheets, trying to anchor myself to something, anything. The contractions were coming faster now, a relentless tide that left no room for respite. My mother-in-law's face hardened. "Your mother had her chance with your other births. It's my turn now. I'm just trying to be fair." "Fair?" I gasped, the word a bitter laugh. "This isn't about fairness. This is about what I need. And I need my mom." Mark returned, his face etched with worry. "Your mom is on her way. She'll be here as soon as she can," he said, taking my hand. But the damage was done. The sanctity of this moment, the birth of our child, had been tainted by a selfish act that I couldn't forgive. "I want her out," I said, nodding towards my mother-in-law. "She has no place here." The confrontation escalated. My mother-in-law refused to leave, her justifications a cacophony in the chaos of my labor. It wasn't until a nurse, sensing the rising tension, intervened that she was finally escorted out. Alone with Mark, I tried to focus on the impending birth, but the seeds of resentment had been sown. Each passing minute was a reminder of the trust that had been broken, of the support that had been selfishly withheld. When my mother finally arrived, the relief I felt was tempered by a lingering bitterness. She swept into the room like a soothing breeze, her presence a balm to my frayed nerves. But as she held my hand and whispered words of encouragement, I couldn't shake off the shadow that had been cast over this moment. The joy of welcoming a new life into the world was overshadowed by a sense of loss, not just for the plan that had fallen apart, but for the family harmony that had been shattered. As my daughter took her first breath, her cries a melody of new beginnings, I knew that the rift that had formed would not be easily mended. As the hours passed, the delivery room became my world, a microcosm of pain and perseverance. The absence of my mother during those initial hours had left a void, one that was only partially filled when she finally arrived. Her comforting touch and familiar voice were a lifeline, but they couldn't erase the undercurrent of betrayal that flowed through me. My mother-in-law's decision to ignore our plan, to prioritize her desires over my needs, had sown seeds of resentment that took root deep within me. Even as my mother soothed me, her words of encouragement mingling with the clinical instructions of the nurses, my mind kept returning to that betrayal. I felt robbed of the peace and support I had so carefully orchestrated for this moment. Labor is a storm. It is raw and primal, a test of endurance and strength. But this time, it was also a battlefield of emotions. The physical pain of childbirth was amplified by the turmoil in my heart. Each contraction was a reminder of the support I had lost, the trust that had been broken. Mark was a constant presence, his hand a steady warmth in mine. But his attempts to comfort me seemed to falter in the face of my internal struggle. He was torn between his roles as a husband and a son, his own emotions a mix of concern, frustration, and helplessness. As I navigated the waves of labor, I found myself grappling with more than just the pain of childbirth. There was a sense of mourning for the experience I had envisioned, but lost. The joy of welcoming a new life was intertwined with grief for the harmony that had been shattered. In those long hours, my world reduced to the confines of that hospital room. The concept of time became elusive. Each minute stretched and contracted, marked only by the rhythm of my labor and the flood of emotions that accompanied it. When the moment of birth finally arrived, it was as if a storm had broken. The pain reached a crescendo, a tidal wave that threatened to overwhelm me. But through it all, there was a sense of determination, a resolve to bring my child into the world despite the chaos that surrounded her arrival. My daughter's first cry was a sound of pure, unadulterated life. It cut through the fog of pain and resentment, a clarion call that anchored me back to reality. As they placed her on my chest, her tiny body warm and quivering, I felt a surge of love that momentarily pushed aside the bitterness. But even as I held her, marveling at the miracle of her existence, the joy was tainted. The presence of my mother, comforting as it was, couldn't fully compensate for the absence of my other loved ones. The promise I had made to my sons, to have them there to meet their sister, was unfulfilled. And the gap that had formed between me and my mother-in-law seemed like a chasm too wide to bridge. In those first moments with my daughter, amidst the swirl of conflicting emotions, I knew that the journey ahead would be about more than just adjusting to life with a new baby. It would be a journey of healing, of navigating the complex terrain of family dynamics and personal hurt. The days following the birth of my daughter were a whirlwind of emotions. Joy, exhaustion, love, and an undercurrent of resentment all melded into one indescribable feeling. My daughter was perfect, a tiny bundle of life that brought a new sense of purpose and love. Yet the shadow of what transpired in the delivery room lingered, casting a pall over what should have been unadulterated happiness. As we settled back home, the reality of the situation began to fully sink in. My mother-in-law's actions had not only affected the birth of my daughter, but had also left a rift in our family. The resentment I felt towards her was a constant presence, an uninvited guest in every interaction. My husband, caught in the middle, struggled to navigate the tension. He tried to mediate, to bridge the gap that had formed between his mother and me. But the betrayal I felt was too deep, too raw to be easily soothed. His attempts, though well-intentioned, often felt like an added pressure to forgive and forget, to move on for the sake of family harmony. The reactions from the rest of the family varied. Some understood my anger, while others, like my mother-in-law, seemed baffled by the depth of my resentment. She didn't mean any harm, they would say, or she just wanted to be a part of the experience. But their words fell on deaf ears. The trust I had placed in her had been broken, and with it, the easy camaraderie we once shared. My mother, ever the peacemaker, encouraged me to talk it out with my mother-in-law. She's family, she reminded me. But the thought of facing her, of having to articulate the pain and betrayal I felt, seemed like an insurmountable task. The wound was still too fresh, the emotions too volatile. The most painful aspect of it all was the impact on my children. They had been excited to meet their sister at the hospital, a promise we had made but couldn't keep. Their disappointment was a reminder of the wider repercussions of my mother-in-law's actions. It was a lesson in the complexities of adult relationships that I wished they hadn't had to learn so soon. In those first weeks, as I navigated the challenges of caring for a newborn, the emotional turmoil added an unexpected layer of difficulty. The usual challenges of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes were compounded by a sense of loss, not just for the birth experience I had envisioned, but for the family unity that had been compromised. As time passed, the initial intensity of my anger began to fade, giving way to a lingering bitterness. The joy of my daughter's presence was a balm, but it couldn't entirely heal the rift that had formed. The relationship with my mother-in-law had been altered irrevocably, and I found myself grappling with the reality of what that meant for our family's future. In the weeks that followed, the rawness of my emotions began to dull, replaced by a persistent ache. The birth of my daughter, a time that should have been filled with pure joy, was overshadowed by a lingering sense of what had been lost. The relationship with my mother-in-law, once warm and cordial, had cooled into something distant and strained. Mark, ever the optimist, believed time would heal the rift. He encouraged conversations, family dinners, attempts to bridge the gap that had formed. But each interaction with my mother-in-law was a reminder of the trust that had been broken. Her presence, once comforting, now served as a trigger for the hurt and anger that bubbled beneath the surface. My mother, a constant source of support, urged me to find a way to forgive. "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die," she would say, quoting a phrase she had always believed in. But the path to forgiveness seemed obscured, hidden beneath layers of hurt and betrayal. The dynamics within our extended family had shifted. Family gatherings, once a source of happiness and unity, now felt like navigating a minefield. Conversations were cautious, laughter forced, as if everyone was acutely aware of the undercurrents of tension. As for my children, they adapted to their new sister with the uncomplicated love that only children possess. They were blissfully unaware of the complexities of the adult relationships around them. Their innocence was a reminder of what was at stake, of the family harmony that needed to be restored, not just for my sake, but for theirs as well. In an attempt to find closure, I eventually agreed to a sit-down with my mother-in-law. It was a difficult conversation, filled with unspoken emotions and carefully chosen words. She expressed her perspective, her desire to be a part of the birth, and her belief that she had been making the best decision at the moment. I listened, the words washing over me, but found it hard to fully accept her explanations. The decision she made had been about her needs, not mine, and the repercussions were something I was still grappling with. The conversation ended with a tentative truce, an agreement to try and move forward for the sake of the family. But the ease of our previous relationship was gone, replaced by a cautious civility. In the months that followed, I focused on my family, on the joy that my daughter brought into our lives. Mark and I navigated the complexities of parenthood and our extended family dynamics, finding a new normal in the altered landscape of our relationships. The path to forgiveness and healing was not a straight one. It was filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But with each passing day, the bitterness began to recede, giving way to a cautious hope for reconciliation. I realized that forgiveness was not a single act, but a process. A journey that required patience, understanding, and the willingness to see beyond the hurt. It was about finding peace, not just for myself, but for my family. A peace that was necessary for us to move forward, to rebuild the bonds that had been strained but not completely broken. Months turned into a year, and as the seasons changed, so did the dynamics within our family. The birth of my daughter, an event that had been marred by betrayal and conflict, slowly receded into the background, becoming a part of our family history, but not defining it. My relationship with my mother-in-law, once a source of warmth and support, had changed fundamentally. We had reached a point of civility, a mutual understanding that was more about coexistence than the closeness we once shared. I had learned to accept her presence in family gatherings, to engage in polite conversation, but the trust that had been broken was not easily rebuilt. The process of healing had been slow, a journey of introspection and understanding. I had grappled with my anger, the sense of betrayal, and the need to protect myself and my children from further hurt. But I had also come to recognize the value of family, of the intricate web of relationships that, despite their flaws, formed the tapestry of our lives. Mark had been my rock throughout this journey, a source of unwavering support and love. His ability to navigate the tension between his wife and mother, to provide comfort and understanding to both, had been nothing short of remarkable. Together, we had found a way to move forward, to focus on the joy and love that bound our family together. The lessons I had learned were not just about forgiveness, but about the complexities of human relationships. I had come to understand that people, even those closest to us, can make choices that hurt us deeply. But holding on to anger and resentment only served to prolong the pain. Forgiveness, I realized, was not about condoning the actions of others, but about freeing myself from the hold of negative emotions. It was a gift I gave myself, a way to find peace and move forward. As I watched my daughter grow, her milestones a series of joyful discoveries, I was reminded of the resilience of the human spirit. Her laughter, uninhibited and pure, was a balm to the lingering wounds of the past. Our family had changed, but it had also grown stronger in unexpected ways. We had learned to navigate our differences, to find a balance between the need for individual respect and the importance of family unity. As I reflect on the journey, on the pain and the healing, I am reminded of the unpredictability of life and the resilience it demands. The experience with my mother-in-law, though fraught with challenges, taught me invaluable lessons about empathy, boundaries, and the complex nature of love and forgiveness. Looking back, I see not just a story of conflict, but one of growth and understanding. It's a narrative that underscores the fact that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can choose how we respond to them. My response, ultimately, was to embrace forgiveness, not for the sake of my mother-in-law, but for my own peace of mind and for the well-being of my family. As I watch my children play, their laughter echoing in our home, I'm reminded of the importance of moving beyond past hurts. In their innocence and joy, they embody the spirit of forgiveness and the endless capacity for love. They are a constant reminder that despite life's trials, our capacity to love and to heal is boundless. This journey has also reinforced the importance of clear communication and setting boundaries. My experience has taught me to be more vocal about my needs and expectations in relationships, ensuring that my voice is heard and respected. In the end, the story of my daughter's birth is not just about a moment of betrayal. It's a testament to the power of healing and the strength of the human heart. It's about finding a way to coexist and maintain family ties, even when they are tested by conflict and misunderstanding. As I close this chapter of my life, I look forward with hope and a deeper understanding of myself and the people around me. The scars remain, but they are a part of who I am, a reminder of the journey I've been through and the lessons I've learned. They speak of my strength, my capacity to forgive, and my unwavering commitment to my family.